Okay, we extracted the SQL Server software onto the C drive. Rename the folder like this. Now, before installing SQL Server failover clustering, we need to create application role on both the nodes. Okay, so for that, open the server manager. We need to do that on both the nodes. Go to the node 2. Okay, first let's add the application role on node 1. Okay, let us see where we are now. We have completed the first step, build Windows Server 2008 cluster. Now we are installing SQL Server failover cluster. Okay, we are in the second step now in the nodes. Okay, let's add the application role on both the nodes. Right now we are in node 1. Select the application server, add the required features. Okay, click next. Select the incoming and outgoing because that is required for the SQL Server in case if you are using DTC. Install. Let us do the same thing on node 2. Add roles. Click next. Select application server, add required features. Incoming and outgoing remote connections, select that. Click next. Install. So that is required for SQL Server failover clustering. Okay, we added the application role on the node 1. Close it. Go to the node 2. Okay, on the node 2 the application role is added. Now we are good to go with there is some issue. There is some error. Let us go to the node 2. Yeah, node 2 seems to be fine. There is one warning, but on node 1 we got one error. Let us see what is that error. Filter the events. Okay, show me the critical node, don't show the warning information. Okay, this is the error. That will okay. Let me find out what this error is, and this should not cause any problem for clustering SQL Server. Okay, but the application server role has been added, but this might create a problem somewhere if we start using this SQL Server. Okay, right now I'm ignoring this error. I'm going to go ahead and installing the SQL Server failover cluster. Note to this went fine. Maybe it could be because of some decom registrations, I don't know. Let us start installing SQL Server software. Click the setup. Click installation. We need to click new SQL Server failover cluster installation. Click that. Okay, this is enterprise evaluation, that is fine. We never read license. Install. Okay, we need to add the MSDTC service before installing SQL Server. I forgot to add that step. Let's add that step. Okay, cancel the installation. Go to SQL Server, the failover clustering panel. We need the IP address for the MSDTC. So I have noted on the IP address what we needed for MSDTC. For the MSDTC, this is the IP address 114. So let's use 114. So maximize node 1. I think it is processing. Right click on the services and applications, configure a service, click next, select the DTC, and yeah, Win cluster DTC should be fine. Here it should be 114. I think that's what yeah, 114. Okay, click next. So what is the cluster that we are going to, what is the drive that we are going to use for MSDTC? Definitely let us go to the failover cluster, we can see better. I guess we have to go to the computer management. We can select any disk, but we have given the volume name for the MSDTC. Okay, for the MSDTC we wanted to use G drive. Okay, so select the G drive. So right click on services, click next, add MSDTC. So here 114, okay, select the G drive. Click next. That's pretty much it. It will create the MSDTC service. So as we can see here, it is creating the resource group for MSDTC. It will create a network name for MSDTC. It will add the IP address as a dependency. It does a lot. So click finish. As you can see, MSDTC is being installed on this cluster. So this will be the default MSDTC service for all the SQL Server failover clusters on this Windows cluster. Okay, now let us go and install SQL Server. This time it should not throw that MSDTC warning. Okay, we don't see the MSDTC warning this time, but there is a cluster warning. Okay, this is fine. Network binding, there is a warning on network binding. Okay, this is fine. So click next. Next. Now we are going to install database engine. Okay, because this is cluster aware very much, and analysis services, this is cluster aware. Reporting services, this is not cluster aware. If you select this, then it will be a installation, standalone installation on this node. Okay, this is not cluster aware, so you should not be selecting that. But if you want to use reporting services on this node, still you can select that. Okay, and these are shared features. Only one instance, one copy of this shared components will be installed on the machine. Okay, we need the SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio with complete. Okay, and what else here? Integration services, this is not cluster aware. Okay, click next. SQL Server network name. Let us type in some network name. This will be our development SQL cluster. Okay, and this is the instance is default instance. Okay, so we can keep the default instance, and the instance ID is MS SQL Server. We can change it. If you change it, then it will be created under that ID folder. Okay, you will get this option in the failover clustering. For the standalone cluster, you won't see this option. Click next. It will install the binaries on the machine, and you can install the database files on a shareable disk. That it will give the option. Click next. Okay, this is the resource group name. Okay, here you will see the resource group name like this. Under that you will see the SQL Server network name like this. Okay, so now the resource name will be some name. You can change it. Even after installing SQL Server resource group, you can change the group name. That is a simple thing. Okay, click next. Here it is. Here it will let us select the disk, whatever the disk that we wanted to assign. Cluster disk 1. Okay, let us go to storage. Cluster disk 1, it is 1 gigabytes. Okay, this is the SQL Server data. Okay, and this is the SQL Server logs. So we will select E and F drives for the SQL Server, which will be cluster disk 1 and cluster disk 2. So select that. IPv4. Okay, this is the SQL Server IP address. So not DHCP. Let us go to the nodes and see what IP address that we wanted to use for the SQL Server. 115. Okay, 92.168.1.115, and our subnet mask will be this. Okay, this option is fine. It will use the services. In Windows, if you are clustering on Windows Server 2003, then it will be using domain group, but here we have the option to select services, which is recommended. Click next. Here we need to select the service accounts for the services. So I'm going to start the services. Meta Manager /CLU ADM, and this is the account that I wanted to log on for these services. And agent service, it depends on database engine. Okay, so collation you can select whatever the collation. By default it will be SQL Latin General CP1 for the database, and Latin 1 General for the analysis services. But here we are not installing analysis services. Okay, we will, I think in the third or fourth nodes, here we will be installing analysis services separately in a separate resource group, not along with the SQL Server, which is generally not recommended. Nobody does installing the analysis services in the same resource group of the SQL Server. Okay, So that will share the resources, both analysis services and SQL Server services, both will share the same resource, fight for the resource. So it's better to segregate them. So we'll install analysis services in a different resource group later, but for now SQL Server database and management studio. Okay, click next. Mixed mode, Windows and SQL Server authentication. I'm going to add the current user as an administrator, otherwise I had to go and add that specifically. Yeah, this is fine for time being. Click next. Data directories. Here you can specify whichever the directory that you wanted to install. Okay, the database root directory, log directory, user log directory. You can select F drive. Okay, because we have given F drive for this clustering setup. File stream, you can say you can enable the file stream if you want. Okay, click next. Password, this is killing me like anything. I'm not going to enable SQL Server authentication. Go ahead with Windows. Click next, and this is the summary. Here it's going to give us what are the services that it's going to install. Database engine and replication full text automatically comes with database engine, and I'm going to install SSMS, nothing else, just these. Okay, look, and here it says what are the disks that it is going to use. Of course we can remove the disks later if you don't want, but I have assigned just 2 disks, one for data and one for log. And go ahead and start installing SQL Server. It will take some time. I'm going to pause the video here and I'll resume after the installation.